episode, we're going to talk about, under the umbrella of one word, which is dateable. But we're going to talk about a lot of topics. Are you dateable? What does dateable look like? Um, my guests today have a podcast and also um, a brand new book. So
Woohoo!
the book is called How to Be Dateable. I want to know first, Yue and Julie, how did the podcast start? Dateable.
Yeah, we have a pretty good story. We have a really good meet cute, Julie and I.
Mm,
Not from
We
Tinder. Yeah.
I know, I wish. It was the produce aisle. No, we were introduced by a mutual friend, and at the time, we were both single but actively dating. And I had
mm-hmm.
just moved to San Francisco from Beijing, actually.
Oh
Um,
wow.
I was in Beijing reconnecting with my roots for 2 years.
Mm,
And then I met Julie, and Julie's like, I don't know, I've never used this word, but you're like the mayor of you were the mayor of San Francisco at the time because you knew everybody. So it was perfect to be connected with Julie. And we were just every time we got together, we just talked about dating and how much we were very much looking for a relationship, but just couldn't figure out the evolving culture of modern dating. I had come
mm,
from a very traditional way of dating. I was a dating
right.
coach for over 10 years. I knew the rules. I knew the old ways of dating. I knew the old gender rules and roles, but I didn't quite figure out how the new way of dating was like.
I think in all these years that you and I have been doing this is the first time you've ever referred to me as a mayor of San
It is.
Francisco.
It is.
So I'll
Mayoress.
take that compliment. But yeah, it was a really interesting time because this was back in 2015 and I
Mm-hmm.
had lived in San Francisco since 2009 and dating apps came in the scene in 2012. So it was all
Mm,
very new here and by the time I met Yue it was so common to me. But to her it was this new way. And it was just a really interesting space of like just technology and changing gender roles. And
right.
where I was as someone that I considered myself a later bloomer, I had, been dating on apps for years and like finally met someone that I thought was like the one
Mm-hmm.
and then realize like there's a lot more to relationships than just meeting someone amazing. Like there's a
Yeah.
lot that needs to come into place. So I think we were just hitting ourselves each other at like some really interesting times in our lives in like life and culture.
Yue, when you were in China, how different was that? Or were you single in China for the 2 years you were there?
I was basically single.
Yeah.
I did date someone and live with him for we lived together for 8 months, but I feel like overall my time there I was pretty single. And there are two different dating cultures in China as with I think any country. There's the local dating culture and there's the expat dating culture.
Right.
And it's actually funny I say that now because I have no idea what the expat dating culture is in the US
Yeah.
because we date
Mm,
as locals. So
yeah.
I was part of the expat dating culture, but my extended family, my single cousins, were part of the local dating culture. So I could see how different the two were. And the local dating culture is all about dating to get married.
Yeah.
So everything was very transactional and it was
Mm-hmm.
very clear from the get go. Like you sit down with someone, you have a list of questions to ask them. What kind of job do you have? How much money do you
Mm-hmm.
make? Do you own a car? Do you own a house? That's it.
Wow.
And like if you pass, you stay for the rest of the date. If you don't, it's actually acceptable for you to leave.
Are
But
you interviewing your dates, saying, and this sounds very old school, almost feels like parents setting us up kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
What are you bringing
well,
to the table?
Yeah.
what's funny is my cousin met her husband through the singles park. Have you heard about these, John?
No, no.
There are these areas in public parks in China where parents of single kids would hold up signs that describe their single kid. And then if you are the parent of your single kid and you think there's a match, you go up to that parent and you basically like court the parent first. And then if you
Wow.
decide the parents are a match, maybe your kids could be a match. So
So I'm assuming kids, like, they're on the swings. We're talking about young kids. We're not talking about like college kids because you're
we're
at the park.
talking about when I say kids, okay, I'm talking about adults in their 30s who are not married.
Oh, wait. So why is this happening in the park? What are the parents doing in the park?
the parents are already retired. You can retire
Oh,
really
got it.
early in
Okay.
China,
Got it. Got it.
and once the parents retire, all they care about is marrying off their kids.
Sure. Sure. So they're doing
And
the
they're
park is because that's kind of where they hang. Maybe they're playing chess, they're doing the tai chi or whatever, and then
yes,
they hold up signs to connect because they have children they want to set up.
it's where other retired parents hang out.
Yeah.
And so my aunt was walking through that section of the park, saw a sign that described someone who she would like as her future son-in-law, approached the mom, they got along really well, and then they introduced the kids, and then it worked out. Now they're married with a kid.
Wow. That's so interesting. I don't know if that would fly here in the States. I can't
Hell
No.
imagine
no.
our parents doing that. No, that's a
It's
very
funny
Asian thing.
because
Yeah.
we complain about modern dating here, but it actually isn't as bad as some of that, in my opinion. I can't imagine my
Right.
parents being that involved.
Yeah.
But, my cousin's like, "I don't want to pick. I'm really bad. My picker's off. I don't wanna
Mm,
do this." And my
Mhm.
mom has all the time in the world, and she wants the best for me. So she really trusted her mom to make this
oh.
decision, and I would
Mm,
say my cousin's husband's pretty damn cool. Like, he's a great match for her. But you're
mm,
right, Julie, it's like we have so much agency in what we experience as dating, y that we think something like that could be restricting.
wow. That's so interesting. So you coming out of that, coming here, meeting the mayor, you guys realizing, oh fuck, how do you navigate this? Dating apps
Yeah.
becoming, they're kind of new on the scene, and there's a swell there. So you guys say, let's start recording. Let's do a podcast. Let's talk about this and try to help other people.
I think we were both just very confused at the time. We
Mm,
were both like, okay, why isn't, our love lives unfolding the way we want?
mm-hmm,
And let's record, our stories and other people's stories. This was 2016 when we decided to start the podcast, and Serial was really big then. So there wasn't
mm,
as many of the types of podcasts that are so prevalent now. But
right.
we thought it would just be a fun experiment to just learn more about what people were going through. And, our podcast really started off as let's just share our funny dating stories.
Mm-hmm,
And,
mm-hmm.
we've been doing this now for 10 years.
Wow.
And yeah, and we've realized that there's just so much more with
Mm,
dating, that it goes so much deeper to obviously the relationships we have with others, but most importantly, the one with ourselves.
yeah.
And just we saw how alone people were feeling and just how personal people were taking dating, including ourselves. And this whole time we're like, there has to be like a better way. It just feels like people are miserable, and that's not
Mm,
ultimately getting us to where we all want to be.
yeah. I mean, I think it's helping so many people just to have this conversation, being transparent with your story, frustrations, and also bringing on other people to talk about this. That in itself, I think, is really therapeutic. People listening in their cars who are frustrated that we've been turned into baseball cards, and who
Mm.
are sick of swipe culture,
Mhm.
definitely can find all of this really helpful. And now there's a book. It's called How to Be Datable. Um, the essential guide to finding your person and falling in love. First of all, how was it? Because I'm an author as well. How was it
Mhm.
co-writing a book? Was it seamless, or did you guys hate each other, or did you guys just be friends?
Well, we had just spent some time on our annual retreat together, in person. So we don't hate each other.
Yeah, yeah. It's
It
such a
was
personal thing, right?
it's a personal thing, and also it took us just. I think the beginning part was very challenging because it
Mm-hmm.
took us a bit to figure out what our strengths were
Mhm.
separately. I think,
Mm-hmm.
I th- theoretically, you just go, oh, okay, everybody just takes alternate chapters. That's what we were thinking. Like, let's
Yeah.
alternate chapters. Let's write. And I will tell you, I don't know my strengths yet, but I know my biggest weakness is getting words on paper. I just
Oh,
a
right,
blank piece of paper.
right.
And Julie's strength, among many other strengths, is getting words on paper. Like, she can get
Mm,
the chapters started. Like,
nice.
she has a vision for the book. So I think it worked out really well in that way, that we were able to figure that out.
Yeah, I think overall it was stronger because there were 2 points of view.
Mm-hmm.
And, we both could really bounce ideas that we've learned individually, that
Mm,
we've talked about on our podcast before. But we obviously, as you know, John, like when you write a book, you are diving a lot deeper into
right.
different concepts and really thinking things through. And, it's like 10 years we've been doing this podcast. We've had like floating thoughts, but writing the book is really like putting them all into that organized way
Mm,
of, okay, now that we know dating is harder than ever before, how do we help people come out of it? Like, what does
mm-hmm.
that actually
Mhm.
look like? What's a framework behind it, opposed to, just
Just a
like,
conversation.
yeah, all
Yeah.
that.
Um,
John, how long did it take you to write Break Up on Purpose?
oh, I hate answering these questions. I write very fast. Um, I write fast because I was a screenwriter for 10 years. And
Right.
so there were tracks laid early where I would knock out 10 pages a day. I trained myself to write very fast. Part of it was trying to be somebody. And if I didn't, because I wasn't getting paid for it, being kind of a starving artist, if I didn't knock out 10 pages a day, I would be really mad at myself.
Mm,
So I
yep.
would,
Mhm.
I would just, and so once I started writing self help books, uh, and self help books are actually easier to write than screenplays. Um, I would knock out a book before. So I wrote Break Up on Purpose before I even signed contracts. Like
Wow.
the contracts were going
What?
through the yeah, they're going through my agency. And the thing is that when you're with an agent and then it takes a while, right?
Yeah.
So I probably wrote it like in a month,
Oh, wow.
6 weeks.
That's
Dang.
impressive.
But
Okay, I asked that question because the other the other challenge is it took us about a year to write, and then it's
yeah,
like another year
yeah,
for promotions and all
sure,
the
sure,
covers and stuff. A lot could happen in that time.
yeah,
And even in a month of writing, a lot could happen. And in the time that we wrote this book, I went through a major breakup.
right,
So I think
right.
also accounting for the changes that could happen in life, actually, in hindsight, was a really beneficial thing
Hmm.
because we were
Mm,
able to look at the book from different perspectives of a single person and of someone who's in a relationship. But
right.
it's crazy, like how much your perspective can change while writing a book.
Yeah, it's like giving birth. Not that I've ever given birth, but it's about nine. It's about nine. So you
Yeah.
you have the idea, the seeds planted, it starts to grow, and then you say, okay, I got to give birth to this thing, and then 9 months of writing, and
Yeah,
then
Yeah.
sometimes painful. Then here it is,
and
and
here it is.
then the moment where you because I'm assuming this is your first book, both of you guys.
Yep. This is
Yep.
our first book.
Mhm.
Yep.
So the moment when you actually get to hold it in your hand,
Yeah.
Mhm.
We're
isn't that a
excited for
crazy
that.
moment? Yeah. And then there's the moment when you go to a Barnes and Noble or
Yeah.
any bookstore and then you see it on the
Yeah.
shelf. Like those two
Yeah.
moments are
Yes.
really, really big.
Very much looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right. So
It's
let's
interesting.
speak. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's really interesting because I think, like, obviously, if this happened, we would be so ecstatic, like, if everyone all of a sudden 2 years later, just all their dating woes were done. But
Mm,
I think we were like, "Okay, what if, like, the dating scene changes? Like, what if some of this isn't applicable?" And then 2 years later, we can absolutely say that I
It's the
think,
same.
unfortunately, it's gotten more painful for people. Like,
yeah.
people have
Yeah.
feel like it's more discouraging, and that is not a good trend that we wanna see. But
Yeah.
I think this book is actually in a way more ripe now than it even was maybe 2 years ago.
I think, I mean, at least I know from clients and friends, I don't know anyone who loves dating apps.
No,
I know
no.
people feel like, okay, we have to use it. It's become a tool. And I think the stats on dating apps, it's like 60% as far as it's very short lived. So people get
Mhm.
on it, they look around, they give it a try, and they're off it pretty fast.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
I was a weird person that liked it. I was
I
definitely a
think you
weird
could like
person
it
that
because it's
liked it. Yeah.
convenient, and then
Yes.
I always say like you got to use the little red spoon at the ice cream, the taster spoon when it comes to dating apps, meaning you can't binge and spend 8 hours swiping,
Mm.
Totally.
but just a little bit,
Just a little
who's
bite.
out there, what's going on, and then kind of put it away and go like if I think if you use it almost like entertainment slash as a tool, but not as a way to find the one, it can be sustainable and good.
Mm.
Well, I think, like, when I heard people talking about why it was so painful, we heard this on our podcast of just, like, the amount of time expended on looking
Yeah.
at people's profiles, thinking about what to say,
Hmm.
all of this, like, I realized I never did any of that. Like I used it very differently. And that's like
Mm,
a lot that we've shared in our book too of, it started off as an intro and that's
Mhm.
really all it is. And it's a way to meet people that you wouldn't normally. I think
mm-hmm,
what we've come to believe is that maybe it's the word match. It's like almost the wrong word that these dating apps have like hand selected this person for us, and then we get
mm,
angry when we're not
right.
getting served the right people. But like when you think about it, if you go anywhere, most people you wouldn't want to date.
Yeah,
90% of them you
Yeah.
wouldn't. But our
yeah.
expectations are so different with apps.
Yeah, and also just lots of false advertising, lots of
Hmm.
people hiding behind
Yes.
phones, the rejection, internalization, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so some things I want to cover from your book, the rom com versus reality checks, which is a section of your book I thought was really interesting. So, the stuff that we see on the screen to what it is like in real life. So, what are some that are rom coms, and then how are they reality checks?
Well, I think this is not a new phenomenon, but
Mm-hmm.
we really want to harp on this in the book is that rom-coms get you right when the credits roll. Like they make you
Mm,
feel like, oh, this is a happily ever after, or they found love after that really grand gesture. And we want to say that the story continues, and actually, what is more profound in a relationship is after the credits roll. So,
mm-hmm.
when you're judging the dating phase of your experience just by the rom com before credits, then you're actually not setting yourself self up for a sustainable relationship because you only care about getting it to the credits rolling. So kind of like the check between the two is, am I thinking about this as a story? Like, is this a story that plays out with a grand gesture and a grand declaration of love?
Mm-hmm.
Or is the reality check that this person hasn't demonstrated any actions that align with what I'm looking for in a partner, but they've done all
Mm-hmm.
these grand gestures that I've seen on shows and movies, but they're not actually showing up as the partner I want them to be.
Right. I think there's also a lot of filling in blanks early
Yes.
on because there's so many chemicals, and like the person can't do anything wrong, and you're already thinking about possibly baby names, and
A
this
hundred
amazing,
percent.
yeah. And so when we start getting there, we're not actually seeing the dirty socks on the floor. We're not seeing the coffee grinds or the way someone is holding space or not holding space. We are just seeing what this could be,
Yeah.
and so there's distortion, I think, when it comes to the collision, honeymoon, all of that, the fireworks. And then this is why I say love happens when it gets hard. Love happens
Yeah.
when there's
Yes.
activation. Try moving in with someone, because that'll
Right.
be you'll
Hmm.
find out very
See,
quick. Yeah,
different sides come out.
yeah.
I mean, I think that's a big piece of where this comes from too. Like in the book, we share some of what we believe are the traps of modern dating, getting in
Mm-hmm.
people's ways. And a lot of these are just the culture that we're in. And we really believe that everyone is dateable. It's really just modern dating that's getting in
Right.
our way. And it's not setting us up for success. In fact, it's setting us up almost to fail.
Yeah.
And we
Hmm.
call this like the expectation of love on demand. That's one of the major
Mm-hmm.
traps, is that
Mm-hmm.
we just think that everything's going to happen instantaneously.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
with the rom-com effect, it's almost like we don't see the work that needs to get put in. So then when something doesn't happen, we either call it too quickly or we just get ahead of ourselves living in a fantasy rather than like observing reality of the situation.
In the book, you guys talk about the 5 different dating archetypes, which I think is
Yes.
cool. And it reminds me of depth psychology, having these archetypes. What are they? And
We love, yeah.
oh, go ahead. Did you lose me?
Nope,
Oh,
nope.
sorry.
You
Uh,
had a follow up.
oh, just well, let's start with what they are first. Y-
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes. We love this. We
yeah.
love this so much because we've been interviewing like thousands of daters, and we really feel like there are these five different buckets that people can fit into multiples. It's not just you're
Mm,
one and that you're one and done. But this is from all the research we've done, and it really describes someone's attitudes and behaviors when it comes to dating that are serving them,
mm-hmm.
plus the ones that may be getting in their way.
Right.
And the five of them actually spell out the word mated, like mate, Id.
Mm.
We didn't
Ooh,
plan that
clever.
actually,
We
which
did
is
it.
the funny part. We realized that after the fact.
But it's easier for us to remember too. We're like, oh yeah, it's made it. But
Mhm.
the first one with M, it's me to a T. It's the maverick. This is the
Mm.
person who has high standards in a relationship, who has high standards for themselves, who is very strong in their identity, who is very independent, who has a strong sense of self in a relationship and
Mm.
doesn't lose themselves and can respect their partner's space. So there,
Got it.
those are kind of the superpowers this person brings to the relationship. But what may be getting in their way slash my way is that I run at the first sign of friction or a hard
Mm.
conversation
Right.
because I feel like that's a threat to my independence or to my
Mm.
identity.
Mhm.
And instead of going deep with someone and trying to work through these issues or a hard conversation, I will legitimately pick up my bags and go off somewhere else.
Yeah, in my world, that's called the avoidant.
Yeah.
Yep, there you
Very,
yep,
very
definitely.
a lot of avoided
Yeah.
tendencies.
Okay, so the Maverick. Julie, what are
Yep.
you? What are you?
So we both have my strong ones. I think everyone has a little of each. You usually
Sure.
typically have two dominant ones, but we have seen people have a couple. So mine are the achiever dreamer. So
Mm.
the achiever is, the person that knows what they want.
Mhm.
They have their life, vision, like the vision of their life all planned out. They want to get to that next stage in a relationship. They're not afraid to like go there.
Mhm.
And that can be like really great because people tend to know where they stand with you. And it's always good to be with someone that has a plan. But I used to get really ahead of myself and really discouraged, like if things didn't go according to a certain timeline and milestones. So it'd be very hard. Like if a date didn't progress past the third date, for
Mhm.
instance, it would feel like I wasn't succeeding. And when you put that pressure on yourself, it makes dating really hard, harder than just like finding the right partner.
Yeah.
So that was a big one for me.
What's the dreamer?
Yeah, so the dreamer is kind of what we were talking about earlier, a bit of, living in the fantasy a lot.
Yeah.
Has usually, again, wants that big love story more than anything,
Yeah.
is that really warm and caring person that sometimes, maybe gives people a little few too many chances.
Mhm.
But when they find the right person, they bring so much love and passion and energy to a relationship, but you can't really get ahead of yourself thinking that you're in a rom-com or not being in reality and
Mhm.
let the wrong people occupy space and time.
Yeah, so I'm the dreamer for
Yeah, I
sure.
was gonna
Yeah.
say this sounds like
Yeah.
you.
That's very me. Um Hopeless romantic
Yes,
and
hopeless
yeah,
romantic.
and early on anxiously attached. Who I chose to love was my life.
Mhm.
And I revolved around, that whole stuff. So just very dreamy, and
Mhm.
we all go down together. That whole thing.
Fill in the blanks.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
feeling
yeah.
yep.
and the achiever dreamer got me in trouble in my dating life. If I was to look back at some of the things that I wish I did differently,
Mm,
was that I would hold on to people that were clearly not the right fit
right.
because I wouldn't wanna let go of the progression.
Mm,
And like also have this fantasy of what could be and when they
right.
change and all of that. And as we know, it's a lot easier to be with someone that's willing and ready to be in it from day one than trying to like go up that uphill mountain.
Yeah. And then what's the ED? So we have Maverick, Achiever, Dreamer,
Yeah.
and
And
then,
we have the thinker too. So the D was the
oh,
dreamer. So we
okay,
have
got
the
it.
T and the E left. The thinker, which may also be a little bit of you, John. I'm just gonna go on a limb and say that. But this is someone who is consistent, reliable, dependable, kind of like
Mm,
the steady force in a relationship who has the capacity to work through a lot of conflict.
mm,
But what may be holding them back is even getting to that commitment because there's a lot of thinking, a lot of research, a lot of I have to be making the right decision before deciding that you want
right.
to make that commitment. So once they're committed, but
Yeah.
it just takes a while
Ambivalent
to get there.
until they, right, like unsure, or maybe an overthinker, and then once they land, they're all in, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
A lot of analysis paralysis. Like this is
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
person we see
yeah.
over analyzing every text to send and
Hmm.
should I do this? Should I do that? Instead of just doing.
I wonder if that's kind of what's happening just in general today with
Yes.
Gen Z
Oh,
because
yeah.
Yes.
man, they have so many choices.
Yep.
I grew up in the '80s. I didn't have a lot of choices. Like, if someone was interested in me, you just go with it, even if you weren't, just because when's the next time that's going to happen? And you go and you just, or like the courage that it takes to walk up to someone and get their number. And if you're able
Yes.
to do that, you're like, oh, I did so much work. Well, I can at least go on this date. Now with just phones, apps, swipe culture, everything is on demand. The amount, whether it's true or not, they believe they have a gazillion choices.
It's
Yeah.
because there's a direct correlation to our access to information. Think
Yeah,
about it. When we were growing
yeah.
up, we had access to nothing. There was no internet. If you it's
Encyclopedias.
right, which hold
Yeah,
all the answers to
yeah,
your next door neighbor.
yeah.
Now making a new friend, even, I was talking to a Gen Zer the other day who was like, it's so hard to even make a new friend because I feel like I need to know everything about them before I
Mm,
make that decision to commit
right,
time to them.
right.
And so you see a lot of inaction because of so much information. They're inundated and they don't, it's hard for them to sift through all that noise.
Yeah. And some of this, it's applicable for everyone and it
Mm,
shows up differently depending on your archetype. So, like what you were
Yes.
just saying, John, about like the example of, so many options out there. The thinker might not act on them, but the last archetype we have is the energizer. And this is the
mm,
person that, they bring a lot to the table because they are usually very like energetic and
yeah.
personable and extroverted and just want to do all the things, and that's really great, especially when you're in a partnership. They're usually the super fun date, but the
Hmm.
problem that presents to them is that they can really just not know when to decide on someone, and just
Mm,
all the go go go, it makes it hard to like really go deep with anyone.
hmm.
And also, like, people can feel right when they're just like the one of many options that you have lined up. And if you're the one that's filling your calendar like energizers typically do, it can actually prevent you from finding like the person that could be more that deep
Hmm.
relationship.
I love that I love that it's a double-edged sword on each. I love that there
Yes.
Yep.
are pros and cons, and one isn't just like good and one's bad. I like that.
Totally.
And
It's
we
kind
want to
of
highlight the
well-rounded.
fact that the very thing that is attracting you to people, like what people find most attractive in you, may also be what is hindering you. Like it's
Yeah.
really
Yeah,
interesting to look
yeah.
at that way, that what maybe someone may be very attracted to my independence, that I don't, need to be around them all the time and I want my own space, but then at the same time I can really push people away. So it definitely all of us have that.
I have a big question for you guys.
Big question. Well,
This is a topic in your book, and I thought, oh, I want to ask them because I'm very curious about this. Um, what is your, and I'm going to insert the word current. What is your current definition of love? In the
oh.
Hmm.
book, you guys talk about definitions of love, and that's right up my alley. And I was
Yes.
like, oh, I love this, and I wonder what their current definition of a love is, right? Like
Yeah.
what it is today, not what it used to be.
I think this is a really big point of our book too. We actually talk about it, in our letting go chapter, which kind of starts off the framework,
Mhm.
because a lot of our definitions of love are built around what we've seen in the
Mm-hmm.
media and
Mm-hmm.
just what society tells us love is, and that's not realistic a lot of the
Yeah.
times. It goes back to what we were talking about at the start, the rom-com versus reality. And when our expectations are on rom-com, we get really thrown off when reality sets in.
Mm-hmm.
And I shared this in the book, but like for me, I was in this on again, off again relationship for close to 5 years. And for me, it felt normal in the sense that it had the excitement and the passion and the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that you think is love. And it really took like, doing this podcast, understanding my patterns and why I thought this was what love was, to realize that actually I viewed love as quite the opposite. And to your question of what is it now, to me, it's feeling safe. It's feeling like someone
Mm.
is there for me no matter what. And it's not like one day it's on, one day it's off. Like it's a consistent love. And it's a choice every day that both me and my partner are making.
Mm. Love it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yue, what about you?
Mine is, I hope this is not a mind fuck for people, but it's a using very intentional words, it's a mutual, consistent choice to expand our capacity for growth.
Mm.
And it's mutual. That's we all
Mm-hmm.
know what that is. It's a choice because we're constantly making this choice. But to expand the capacity for growth means we may not always be growing, but we are willing to expand our heart or expand our mind so that it can hold this potential for growth. Because I don't want to place that pressure for growth all the time, but at least someone's willing to expand.
Yeah, I love that. My definition, I don't know what else. It was either on Tumblr. I saw an image, or maybe it was a newspaper or a magazine. Um, it was it was a Viagra ad, but it was two older people, maybe in their 70s, in separate bathtubs, and they're on the Grand Canyon. Like they've come a long way. They were both facing outward, looking at down at the world, and the only thing connecting them uh, was their hand. So they were in separate tubs.
Oh.
And I remember seeing this image
Ah,
and thinking, "Oh, this is actually what love looks like."
ah.
Because my old definition would be them two in a jacuzzi
Mm.
Together,
on top of each other, facing each other.
straddling.
Yeah. And also being in a jacuzzi. I mean, you can only be in a jacuzzi for like what 30 minutes, and it's
Right.
I don't know.
claustrophobic and
Julie,
creamy.
It's
And
Julie
not
would,
sustainable. I
no,
could
it's
be
not
there for
sustainable.
an hour.
Julie
Yeah.
would can do a few hours.
Right. And of course, the jacuzzi is hot and sexy and steamy and all that, but it's not sustainable. And
Mm,
um, just this idea of two people in their own tubs, only connected with their hand,
wow.
that landed for me.
Is it the
Mm,
independence but interconnection that
Yes, it's
resonates?
interdependent instead of
Interdependence, yeah.
codependency. It's two people who bring their own lives, their own
Mm.
life containers
mhm.
together, who decide to do life together. And then the other piece of my definition of love is that it's greater than its parts. I think that
Mm.
once we swim past the breakers, work through activation, and really stay in something, as long as it's honest to us. I'm not saying if it's abusive or anything, but working through our own shit, I think that then love can become greater meaning. Um, and this is what I think is the magic and miracle of love. It's actually meant to heal us. It's meant to give us
Mhm.
Yeah.
a corrective experience. And it's like, what other creature on this planet has that, where you
Oh,
can love someone and that love that you guys build can actually heal each other, you know?
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. But wait, back to the Viagra ad.
Yes, back to Viagra.
Why do you think, what was the meaning of that ad for Viagra then?
I don't. I mean, I obviously
It's very
it
deep.
was I mean, they were naked, but it was. I think a less on the nose about elderly people making love. They were on the Grand Canyon in naked in bathtubs,
Maybe it's
so
like
it was like
it's
date
time
night
to
or something.
reconnect again or something. Like
Yeah, I
it.
don't know. And it's like it's like their version of date night or something. I mean, it wasn't realistic because I don't who's gonna be able to put bathtubs on top of the Grand Canyon. It was very Instagrammy.
A
Visually, it was
lot
very cool.
missing here.
Yeah.
This is very deep for a Viagra ad.
Yes. So I don't know, but that was my definition, or that is my
I
definition.
Interesting.
love that.
Yeah.
You know what I just thought of that was, I think, so jarring for me is that we all think that dating is the hard part, right? And it is, by all
Yeah.
means. I don't want to
Yes.
say it's not hard. It's
Yeah.
different hard. There's a lot of pain that comes from things not working out and the
Mm-hmm.
almost situations, the almost breakup, as you call it, like the relationship, all of that. And it's very challenging that way, but I think what I wasn't necessarily prepared for was once you're in a relationship that is healthy, that is secure, there is a different type of hard. That's that confronting yourself and
Unfamiliar.
yes,
If you're not used to that, it's uncomfortable.
it is for sure.
Yeah. Um, I think also based. I mean, depending on our story, a lot of times we'll find safety. We'll find something that is healthy, and we will label it as boring,
Mhm.
or it's because the chaos isn't there, or
Yep.
like it doesn't feel like a Korean drama. Uh, we're like, this is flat. I had better sex with a guy who was um, abusive to me and stuff, and
Mm.
it's because it was very sticky, and it was very the lightning in the bottle isn't always a healthy thing. It can be a dysfunctional dynamic.
It definitely can. And I think that
Yeah.
goes back to what you were saying with healing is love is about healing together,
Yeah.
but the very person who can help you heal is the very person who can hurt you the most too.
Sure.
So I think we get this question a lot. It's like, at what point do you leave a relationship? And I think
Yeah.
that's the answer is when you no longer can heal each other, you're actually hurting
Mm.
each other.
Ooh, I love that answer. That's a great answer. I get that question often too, and I think for me, and of course, there's no blanket answer, right? Every
Mm-mm.
relationship is unique and different. But for me, it's like when you've done everything you can, and you start breaking up with yourself.
Mm,
That's a good one.
You
that's
Yeah.
know?
really good.
Yeah.
It's one of the things we talk about too in our book is like the settling paradox that no one
Mm-hmm.
wants to settle. Everyone, it's like the biggest fear of daters is
Right.
to settle, yet we're settling for situationships or unfulfilling relationships. And there's many reasons why that happens, but I think a big one is that we don't actually know what love feels like. It's like what you were saying, John, if it feels boring, so I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
go for the exciting person, or it's just, continuing to go down the patterns of what's familiar to us
Mm-hmm.
and, breaking up with that and realizing like that actually isn't self-serving is a big part of eventually finding the right person is letting go of all these, things that are not serving us, but it's a
Right.
really hard thing for people to do.
Yeah. What would you say? Just a few things. How would you, if you're single and you're listening or watching this, and you're like, how would I know that if I'm even dateable? I mean, I think I am, and my friends think I'm cool, and I think I'm fairly attractive. But how do I know if I'm dateable? Um, what would you say to that? And then also, plus, can you give them a few tips how to be more dateable,
Mm,
if that makes sense?
great question. We think that we're all dateable. Everyone's
Hmm.
dateable.
Hmm.
You are dateable. And that's because it's by default. Humans are built to do life with other humans. We're
Yeah.
meant to be, with others and attract others. So if it's so natural to our biology, then we are naturally dateable.
Mm.
But I think modern dating has made us become more contrived in what being dateable means so that we are farther and farther from our authentic selves.
Right.
So to be more dateable really actually means just getting back to your authentic self. Like, who is the
Mm.
core
Hmm.
you? And ignore the noise that's around modern dating right now.
I love that answer. I talk a lot about the pseudo self and the solid self, and to be more dateable, I think to attract instead of chase, you got to be more in your solid self, which is what you're talking about, more your authentic self.
Yeah. One of the biggest revelations we had from, our 10 years of doing Dateable is that you actually don't need to be good at dating the way
Mm.
it is today, the way it's designed today. That's not to say that you shouldn't date. That's not to say dating is flawed, but the
Yeah.
way that modern dating is, it's all around disconnection. It's like who can show the least interest, or I'm going to spend all this time crafting the perfect profile and message, but I'm not
Hmm.
actually even talking to anyone. So there's so much disconnection happening. So I think to be dateable, and this is like a real, this is the shift that we're talking about is like, how do we get back to that place of connection? Because that's what's
Mm.
missing today. So, we go into a date, it's always like me versus you. Like, I need to one up this person, or I can't show my cards because,
Hmm.
then I don't want to be the one rejected. What if we looked at this person as our partner, even if it's for an hour? Something that makes us feel more connected. Like, how do we approach this as a team? What you would do in a relationship
Hmm.
instead of the way that we're approaching dating that's so combative.
What are some ways that we can actually put the shield down and connect more, be more authentic? What are some ways that we can do that, especially in today's swipe culture?
We think that this sounds so simple, but it's follow your curiosity.
Yeah.
Don't follow
Mm.
a script. Don't follow what someone else told you to do. We've had many people who are like, give me a list of questions to ask on a date.
Uh
Well,
huh.
you don't know how that conversation's going to go, but if you follow your curiosity, then you don't actually care about where it goes. You just care about what you find out about this person who's in
Mm-hmm.
front of you, this human being. And I heard this beautiful story today of an author who wrote a book all based on her taking a walk and a drop of water fell on her head. She looked up and she saw a dress hanging on someone's balcony, and the dress inspired her to investigate who could be wearing this dress? Who's this person who
Mm-hmm.
washes their dress, who hand washes their dress? And she wrote an entire book around this. And I feel like we are missing the point here in dating. It's like we go in thinking we need to understand all the list of things that we need to check off with this
Yeah.
person,
Yeah.
when it's like we just want this person to unfold in front of us.
Mm.
They are a story waiting to be told.
Yeah. And I think there's so much that's done from a feeling of like protection. Like this red flag and ick culture is so toxic, in my opinion, because
Mm.
I think it's really just looking for everything that's wrong with the person. And of course, we're not talking about like the real red flags that like wreak havoc to a relationship. But what is happening is that people are throwing up red flag for every last thing, like
Yeah.
they wore an
Hmm.
ugly belt or something that's not a red flag in terms of like the way you're treated. And I just think about like, would you want to go on a date where someone is like nitpicking everything about you? If
Mm-hmm.
we're showing up to dates that way, like, how is that actually fostering any connection of any type? So
Mm-hmm.
I think how can we get rid of that is maybe step one of just like, I'm going to go in and meet this new human being and follow my curiosity and discover them for who they are. I don't have the data review list of questions that I'm trying to check off and make sure they're answering a certain way. And I'm not checking for all the red flags and icks, but just treating them like a human being. I think the magic of dating is gone right now.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I totally
Hmm.
agree. Put the black light down.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and if you're looking for something um, that you're not going to like, you're going to find it no matter what. And
We
then
all
Yes.
have red flags.
well,
All of
yeah,
us do.
yeah. I mean, no one's perfect, and so you're going to find stains if that's all you're looking for. You know.
Every
Uh,
time. In
yeah. Every
everything,
time.
in every area of your life, because those are we actually have a section about limiting beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the
Mm-hmm.
limiting beliefs spotlight are, the things that you're looking for, that you think are the reason why you're single, or the reason why this person's not right for you, or the reason why your life may not be going the way it is. That's all you're going to find.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely the fixed mindset over the growth mindset. I want to leave on hope, and I want to um, I want to leave my listeners feeling more encouraged than discouraged.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, so how would you, what do you guys have to say? That's putting a lot on you guys. How would you do that? How would you give the listener a
Yeah.
little more hope and optimism
I
in
mean, I
today's days?
actually think our book is hopeful, even though it starts
Yeah.
off with all the challenges and why dating is harder than ever before. Like when our editor read it, she's like, "It feels like I got a hug at the end," and
Mm,
that
Hmm.
is what we want to leave people is that hope because we actually believe after doing this podcast for 10 years that this is the best time to find love. Whenever we meet people, they're always like, "Dating is the worst. It's so terrible, right?" And we actually both didn't feel that way. Like we felt like we met people that we've had relationships that have way far exceeded our expectations and what we thought was possible. We've seen it with members of our community. I
mm-hmm.
was looking back at this photo from like a meetup that happened like in 2021, so like a couple years ago at this point. And pretty much everyone in that photo is in like happy, healthy relationships right now.
Hmm.
Mm,
So it is absolutely possible to find love and find your person in today's world. And I think all the choice makes it that you're finding someone and not just falling into it either, like finding someone that you can really build and create with.
mm-hmm.
But we really need to get out of our own way, and what modern dating is putting in front of us. So as soon as you can recognize that of all the traps, all the things that are causing us to not, actually find that type of enjoyment in dating, once we block that out and do it a different way, it's absolutely possible.
Yeah. Thank you,
Yes.
UA. A
And
little bit of
you
hope.
know, the hope is this is the best time to date. I know that sounds
Mm,
contrarian, but the hardest times to do anything are the most ripe for opportunity, for
Mm-hmm.
change, for something different to happen. And for the last decade or so, every every resource we've had has been about how to play in the modern dating game, how to just stay at this level. But now, people who listen to your podcast, who listen to our podcast, you're all listening right now because you are ready for a change. You're
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't want to figure this out anymore because this is messy. I want to figure a way out. That's different. And so I think there are a lot of people who are in the same boat. And if you are able to implement some of these changes, getting back to your authentic self, clearing the noise, getting rid of what's not serving you,
Mm.
understanding what you authentically want, you are able to find others who are in the same boat. And we will, maybe it's a plane because we're all going to fly out of this thing together and leave all that leave the messiness for the people who still want to play in that game.
Yeah. Love it. Thank you. I'm going to say that when you are single, because we're so trying to find who we can invest in and trying to find love, we forget that the growth soil is the richest, I think, when
Yes.
we're single, because there's no relationship dynamic, only you. And so now's the time to be dateable by working on yourself or by doing things that light you up. For me, it
Mhm.
was buying a motorcycle and getting into fitness and doing all these things, go on trips. Uh, Dating yourself makes you more dateable. If you're not
Hmm.
dating yourself, then there's going to be a desperation. There's going to be you trying to find love and then putting so much weight on that. If that doesn't work out, then there's a huge cliff to fall off, and that energy, I think, can be what brings the plane down. So I think being dateable is um, knowing that the growth soil is rich, and to actually be dating yourself while you're looking for love.
Yeah, we
So
call it.
you're saying you work out not as a thirst trap, but you actually do it for yourself, John.
Yes, yes,
We love to endearingly call it
yes.
master dating, like when you're dating
Oh, that's funny.
yourself. That
Yeah.
is the buzzword that was going around our community for quite a while. People would post their master dating photos of
Mm,
them like at a bar themselves or on a hike or doing something they loved
yeah.
because yeah, like what you were saying, it's like life doesn't stop. It's not a layover. It's a time for exploration. And I think the skill building that if you let it happen in dating, like, yeah, it really sucks when someone ghosts you, but if you can build
Mm,
skills around how to emotionally regulate and, even like have a conversation with that person and practice open communication, all of these are skills that are going to serve you when you do finally find that relationship.
yeah. Yeah. You weigh at 51 and being a dad, I don't think I could build any kind of traps made of thirst.
Oh,
Uh,
I,
I've given that up.
are,
Hey, let's
mm,
end on a little serendipity. I just noticed if you're listening, they have purple mics, a very specific kind of purple mic. I have a
yes.
black one, and I just realized to fit in. Look at this. This is
Oh, it's like your pseudo purple mic.
it's like my, but it's like the exact same
Tis
color.
LaCroix can. It
It's
really
exactly
is.
wow. Look at this.
You
It's like
can join the Dateable fam, John, with your.
it's the Voltron lions coming together to create the giant
Oh my
robot.
god! If
It's
you can
amazing.
create a mic flag out of that Lacroix can,
That'd be amazing.
that would look so
Yeah.
good.
Anyway,
You definitely be sponsored for life.
where where can we find you? And I'm assuming the book's wide.
Yep, the book is
Yeah.
ready and you can find it pretty much at any retailer and then howtobedateable.com. It's all there and Dateable Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you
Awesome.
find both of our books next to each other at a bookstore, please take a
Oh,
picture. Wouldn't
that
that
would
be
be
Yes,
serendipity.
so
that would be
amazing? Like,
Yeah.
amazing.
yes.
Yeah. Thank you guys for all your work and not only the podcast but now the book and just the dialogue you guys have been creating for 10 years. That's a lot of
It's a long
conversations.
time.
Yeah.
Yep. Still
Thank
going.
you.
Where can we find you as far as social?
At Dateable Podcast is the handle we have for
Cool.
everything.
Awesome.
Yep.
All right, check out their podcast, get their book, and work on you. Thank you for listening. Be well.
Yay.
Awesome. You
Awesome.
guys have Riverside, so you know it